Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. But when you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters. The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
I was...
Look again. Who's it?
This isn't the Matrix.
No. It's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
Look at that scene carefully, because it is a nigh perfect symbol and reflection of the reality that we happen to live in. A reality which, in actuality, bears quite a great deal of resemblance to the fabled Matrix. What exactly am I talking about specifically? Well, I'm talking about just what the scene describes. A world that seems perfectly normal, where everyone is plugged in, where you, the unplugged, are not. And a world, as Morpheus says, where the plugged in are so dependent on the system that they will fight you to preserve that system. Moreover, the irony should be lost to no one that the woman in the red dress is an agent of violence, but that agency, that proxy agency, is exercised and enacted by a man, the actual agent, a male wielding a gun. And thus do we find ourselves in a situation absurdly similar to the Matrix. Because the things we talk about, the things we deal with, are so core to what it means to be a human being, and so core to the nature of the Matrix itself. It's what keeps the Matrix going, essentially, that the analogy cannot be drawn too often, in my opinion. In this video, I want to talk about something that's very important, namely the male dwellers in the Matrix, the enablers, and they are legion. They are truly legion. They represent the vast majority of men. And there are different names for them: white knights, manginas, pussy beggars, PUAs, so on and so forth. All of these men, in some way, shape, or form, serve the interests of women. Different ways. In the previous video, I made the point, a point I strongly believe in, that feminism does not exist without women. But neither does feminism exist without men. And a more twisted result of men's desire to serve the female collective will. The collective desire of men to serve the Borg consensus, if you wish to call it such. The Borg consensus offers commands the slave, for lack of a better word, and the slave obeys. The slave obeys even when it's to its own detriment, or even when it's to the detriment of other slaves. That is to say that feminism came about because men, constantly listening and heeding the words of women, the desire to satisfy women's wishes, they put the laws into practice. They made desire into law. But this is nothing new, because this has been going on for millennia, if not millions of years. Men have always kowtowed and adhered to the desires of women. Men have always been what women wanted them to be. They've always subordinated their desire for freedom to their desire to reproduce. In rare cases, some have thrown off those shackles. Not many, though. And let me just say, I'm not going to talk much about women in this video, that generally speaking, women are a lost cause. Generally speaking, on the whole, women do not have the best interests of men at heart, and they cannot be seen as men's advocates in that sense. And simply because a lone mother with a son, who's having problems with the legal system or in the culture recognizes that there's a problem does not make her a philosophical champion or advocate of men's rights or of men's issues. Generally speaking, women will advocate for themselves, and women's interests, female reproductive interests, often stand in direct opposition, in diametrical opposition to men's wishes. Only that, for millennia, men have subordinated their own wishes to acclimate themselves to the wishes of the female. You see, we place way too much value in the golden uterus. The golden uterus, as I said, overinflated, hyperinflated in value. So I want to talk about male enablers. All those men in the matrix, effectively in the matrix. All of them. Most men are. Because these are the men that will throw you under the bus, that will hate on you, that will, in some cases, kill you for the sake of female approval. You know, bros before hoes, that's just a catchphrase. Always has been. Has no real meaning. Not for most men. And I'm making this video because it's important. Because just as women will not be the be-all and end-all, the final means of changing things, if things can be changed at all, and I have grave doubts regarding that, it stands to reason that men will have to be that fulcrum of change. For a simple reason that it's only men that will, to the extent that they have at all, any interest in pursuing their own interests as men. It won't be women. And I don't hold that against women. I don't. Women should and can pursue their own rights, their own issues, but it's time we come to acknowledge that those rights and issues do not coincide oftentimes with those of men, and that we are often pursuing oppositional goals. But that said, men are the primary problem in light of this particular angle of looking at things, because men always enable female behavior. Proxy agency, the woman in the red dress turning into the agent with the gun. There you have the symbol. As long as men have done and continue to enact or give shape and form in the form of action to women's wills and desires, we're going to have a serious problem. Because quite frankly, without that desire to please the female, things would indeed be very different. It would be a completely different world. You see, when I look at history, I see a succession of men pursuing a primary interest in pleasing the female. Many of the great wonders of architecture, of the engineering feats, were done primarily based on a desire to compete for the sake of access to reproductive resources that females happen to offer men. And so, whilst those achievements themselves are quite impressive, and no, they are impressive, the issue here is that the motivating factor was one that was not based on rational self-interest or the interests of the individual or interests of men, but one simply of the typical dominance hierarchy competition. There's a difference between pursuing an interest because you're passionate about it for its own sake, because it gives you fulfillment, and doing it because you think it will improve your station. They are very, very different things indeed. And this is part of the problem, because in this video I'm trying to explore how we can actually reach out to men, because men do and continually enable all the bad stuff we see from feminism and from your typical Jane Doe. You know, the Jane Doe who might be in a state like Minnesota or California where you have lifelong alimony, and she thinks it's a good thing too. It's probably a male judge telling that poor schmo in Minnesota, yeah, you have to pay her for the rest of your life, the poor darling. It's men enabling the system. Well, the logical question is, how do we unenable men to... How do we get men to unenable the system? The Matrix. What does he say? The Matrix is a system, Neo. Yeah, this is a system. It's a system of biological and cultural imperatives, culture being informed by biology. And it is possible to be unplugged. I'm proof of this, and you, the viewer, are likely proof of this as well. It's not so much that I don't find women attractive. I do. Some are very attractive. But in this state of being, which I like to call intellectually induced asexuality, I have taken off the rose-tinted glasses, if you will. I've stopped looking at women under the haze of my own reproductive drive and look at them as they actually are. They are, generally speaking, not all of them, but many of them, rather feeble creatures, and I don't mean physically, but generally speaking, very few of them have anything to contribute intellectually. Very few of them have a desire to improve themselves to contribute intellectually, and very few of them have anything to offer apart from their vagina, maybe their mouths for a blowjob, and the rest of their bodies. So I look at that, I look at the complete package, and I think this is simply not worth my time. And when you internalize that, you lose interest. You lose your interest, and you cease to be a slave to pussy. Y'all remember Barbarossa's words that you're about to hear right now.
Do you see how we've allowed women to dictate our worth based on access to an inherent anatomical orifice that they never had to work for, that they were just born with? Do you see this as the unattainable fool's errand that it is? The worship of pussy and women has to stop, and I intend to do as much as I can do to show men exactly what female worship is all about, because I believe that then, and only then, will men truly understand what it means to be free.
Indeed. So it is freedom. It is freedom that we have to offer. This really has to be the sales pitch going forward. If we are to deprogram, to unplug the armies of men stuck in the Matrix, the enablers, the only thing we can offer is freedom. And as Barbarossa has intimated in previous videos, men are constantly caught between the desire for sex, for reproduction, and the desire for freedom. And I'm convinced that almost every man, upon proper reflection and introspection, will realize that freedom is a far loftier goal, will realize that freedom is a far greater goal. Because the caving into the reproductive drive comes at so many costs in today's world, far more than they're worth. Be it the legal system, the day-to-day dealings with female shenanigans, the whinging, the whining, the manipulation, none of that is worth it. Ask yourself next time you spend a couple of hours hanging out with a woman and then fucking her and then wishing you were on the other side of the world when you're done, if that was a worthwhile pursuit of your time. Could you have been doing something else? Be it entertainment, spending time with friends, engaging in intellectual pursuits, empowering your mind, learning science, whatever it might be. Would that have been, was the amount of time you spent with that female a good and useful, productive use of your time by way of comparison to things you could have done that would have been either more enjoyable or more fruitful to you as an individual? This is the key to understanding what freedom is about, and that pursuing these sorts of things with women is giving her validation and lending credence to the erroneous belief that she has a greater value than a man, a greater value than your mind, because ultimately, beyond physical strength, the defining characteristic of man as a being is his mind. It is man's mind that has conquered civilization, and man's mind that has launched him into the stratosphere. That is a far greater gift than the curves, breasts, and uterus of a woman. And yet we are blindsided constantly. So the sales pitch, and it is a sales pitch, we have to offer men, is that their choice is one of freedom or non-freedom. You will never, ever, ever be free if you find yourselves in a serious relationship or a marriage with a woman, because that marriage and that relationship will be predicated on her desires and your submitting yourself and your own subordination to those desires. To the extent that that marriage is smooth, or that relationship is smooth and without rough edges, that too will be predicated on your willingness to cave into what she wants. Where you do not cave into what she wants, there will be problems. There will be friction, there will be stress, and stress, I might add, is something you should avoid at all costs. Always avoid stress. It makes you sick, and then it kills you, quite literally. Freedom, on the other hand, pursuing things that you enjoy on your own time, at your own pace, that is something very, very different. It alleviates stress. It allows you to live the life that you want for yourself and for those you choose to share it with. That's ultimately what going your own way is about. It's not about not caring about anything. It's about caring about the things you care about, as well as the people, the individuals that you care about. And there's no female and no relationship in the entire world that can offer you the freedom that that sort of lifestyle does in fact offer you. Remember, any form of relationship will be a negation of that freedom, particularly marriage, where you have the state and laws involved. And I think there are enough men out there who, if you offer the sales pitch to them, might begin to see the light, might begin slowly to unravel and become unplugged. It only takes a little bit. So many men out there have this feeling of unease, that something is just amiss, something is wrong in the atmosphere. Their entire lives, I know that was the case with me, and all they need is a little bit of a shake on the shoulder, an awakening. That's all they need. But until then, the masses of matrix men, the wielders of guns, disguised as women in red dresses, they are in fact our enemies. Make no mistake, because they will kill you, quite literally in some cases, in order to protect their female masters. MGTOW is a shift, a paradigm shift, and it is a philosophy, make no mistake. It is the recognition that, quite frankly, women's reproductive resources just ain't good enough anymore. They need to offer more to both men and to the world. And they need to be held accountable for their actions. But that's only going to happen because I don't believe women are in large measure capable of that. A few are, not many are. It'll only happen if men start taking the red pill. It will only happen if men start being concerned about personal freedom and liberty for themselves and for and whoever they choose to share that with. It's not women who are going to change things, it's men as usual. And it's up to us to help men navigate that path, and it's up to us to try to awaken and unplug as many men from the matrix as we possibly can. This is a task we should all be thinking about, and this is what I see as my primary task. Thanks for watching. Take care.